Welcome to the Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel. I'm joined by Bruce Feldman and Ralph Russo for this Week 9 recap show. Once again, there's a lot to get to in the SEC. Big 12 race getting crazy. Deion took one on the chin, to say the least. But guys, speaking of coaches taking one on the chin, I think we all were blown away Saturday night at how quickly and how out of hand that LSU Texas A&M game got. LSU was actually winning 18-14 at the half, and the next thing you knew, they were down 49-18. Tiger Stadium emptied out. Ralph, your thoughts on where things stand with Brian Kelly as we record this? Is this going to be another one of those Sunday, shoot, I wish we'd recorded a couple hours later situations?
I don't think so. I don't know if Bruce has any.
I don't think it will be either at this
any
point
better
today.
Information than this. I don't think it's today. I do think we could see they have a bye week before Alabama, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if there's a new offensive play caller between now and then. And I think we have seen a trend of a little bit of a trend, right? Of schools like, hey, we got this massive buyout. How are we going to do this? And maybe that buys a little time. But no, I don't think we will be in a couple of hours we need to do an emergency podcast. That's the best information I have, Bruce, but no one's got better information than you. So what do you think?
Yeah, as for the play caller, it's he's the offensive coordinator, Joe Sloan. There's been a lot of friction around him, their inability to run the ball very well. I mean, I think that's been a big issue, but that's not the biggest issue, right? Ralph, you and I did this extensive deep dive around this time last year on Brian Kelly at LSU, and it's honestly, I think there's no way around it. It's just been a bad fit. I think a lot of people could have seen this early on, but it's just glaring, right? I mean, you can say he was a terrific coach at Notre Dame. He's been a terrific coach at other stops. This job is different, right? And the AD, Scott Woodward, he's been, famous for chasing big names. Worked out well at Washington, where he hired Chris Peterson out of Boise. It didn't work out great at Texas A&M, where he threw an insane amount of money at Jimbo Fisher, and that didn't work. He threw an insane amount of money at Brian Kelly, and it's year 4. This is the thing, and we've said this a lot on this podcast. The 3 guys he followed at LSU, Ed Orgeron before him, Les Miles before him, Nick Saban. The only thing they have in common is they all won national titles, and they all won them within their first 4 years. His record compared to those 3 guys at this same time isn't close. And on top of it, we talked about this a bunch coming around when they were going to play at Clemson and even after the Clemson win. They basically tripled their salary on their roster. Brian Kelly talked about how this was the best team he's had since he's been there.
He was bragging about that money being spent actually during the offseason. They were talking a lot about how we're spending now. So, yeah, we're in great shape.
He also talked about receipts, and we'll see you guys at the national title game. This was a while back. They're nowhere near the national title game. They're not going to be anywhere near the SEC title game. And if you look at it just plainly, I mean, Mike Elko, who has not been at Texas A&M that long, went there and embarrassed them for the second straight year. And it was jarring to see and to hear how that stadium sounded in the second half when A&M absolutely pummeled them. And I thought, Stu, what's telling is whenever we would talk about this matchup going into the week, it all came back to, well, it's Tiger Stadium on Saturday night. As if Tiger Stadium on Saturday night was going to, more than anything, be the thing that gets LSU on track. And it's just not there. And I think in the post-game press conference, somebody had asked Mike Elko, well, Brian Kelly was 20-1 in Tiger Stadium at night or something along those lines. And Mike Elko did not miss a beat. And he said before he could finish the question, 20-2. And he corrected them real fast. And I don't know how fast or what LSU does forward, because when you talk to people who are really dialed in at LSU, they think it's not just Brian Kelly who's in trouble, that the donors and the big money people, they want Scott Woodward, the AD, out of there. What do you think happens, Stu?
Well, that would be an interesting twist on it, but it would also be, I mean, you were saying off the top, like, think about how much money Scott Woodward has wasted of these schools, you know, on coaching salaries gone wrong. So it would be, I think, logical, I guess, for him to take for there to be some accountability there. I think, you know, I came on here after the Penn State UCLA game, after the Penn State Northwestern game, and said James Franklin is done. I didn't know it would be that day. Brian Kelly is done. And a big part of that, guys, is, yes, there's the on-field part of it, right? They're falling further away from national title. People there don't like Brian Kelly. I mean, usually, you know, the coach is if the coach isn't beloved, he's at least like, he's our guy, right? I think the fact that it emptied as quickly as it did, I mean, you could hear the disbelief in Chris Fowler's voice. Like, this is LSU. This is Death Valley at night. And those fans couldn't get out of there fast enough. Shows you how done they are, how disgusted they are. Frankly, some similarities with James Franklin. Obviously, in this case, they lost to a top 5 team, not UCLA. But nevertheless, so it's like, what's the plan now? And, you know, I said on here going into the weekend, he's got this chance with 2 top 5 games in a row. If he wins one of them, not only is he buying himself some time, but like, they were technically going to be back in the CFP conversation. But I think what you saw Saturday night with A&M just steamrolling them in the second half, that they're not even close to being a CFP team. They're done. But let's flip it, Ralph. Texas A&M, are you a believer now? Maybe you were a believer before.
Nobody's been more of a believer than me.
Yeah, you and I both had them in the playoff before the season. We also saw Alabama pull out a very tough game at South Carolina. Is A&M your class of the SEC? An extension of that, and you were at Vanderbilt, so I'd be curious your thoughts on this. Is the SEC going to get 5 teams into the playoff?
I have been hesitant, even though I've been ranking A&M very highly for most of the year. I've been out ahead of the curve on them for most of the year. I really like Marcel Reed, too. They just do a lot of things well, A&M. I am still a little bit hesitant to sort of say this is the best team in the SEC, but now I'm wondering if that's just my, constantly defaulting to Alabama and Georgia, because that's what we've all done over the last few years, and that's worked out okay, right? For the most part, one of those 2 teams has owned the SEC. We're it's about almost 10 years. Well, I guess it's going back to when LSU won the national championship. So what is that? About 7 years now, 6-7 years now. It's getting hard to push back against A&M. They will be the highest ranked team in the SEC on my ballot this week, for whatever that's worth. They are first place in the conference. I mean, so what more did the Aggies need to do, Bruce, to convince us? And yeah, I mean, I think that when you start looking at the SEC, whether A&M is the best team or not, you do start seeing what are the playoff teams that we're going to eliminate here? There's still a lot of big game down the stretch, but I think you got 4 teams, A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama, that seem to be in very good position to make a playoff spot. And we'll get to back to Vandy in a second, but yeah, I'll just throw it to you, Bruce. I think that there's enough fringe contenders here to make 5 playoff teams from the SEC look like a very viable option.
Yeah, for me on the A&M piece of it, I was wowed last night. Marcel Reed, every time I watch him, I'm just so impressed by how he plays. He is such a dynamic athlete. You see the basketball background in terms of just the sharp cuts at top speed, just the burst. By the way, they ran for like 225 yards last night, and their best running back wasn't in the game. We forget Le'Veon Moss didn't even play, right? And so they kept on bringing in backs who looked really good. It wasn't, it was just really impressive. Their defense lost a bunch of dudes in the front four, and they get after people. I mean, it's hats off to Mike Elko. He did a terrific job at Duke. He's doing an amazing job at Texas A&M. I think it's a no-brainer that they should be the highest. I mean, to me, they are the class of the SEC. Alabama has had a really tough schedule. They found a way to win. They came back. They do have a pretty, I'm not saying that this is going to diminish anything from them. I'm just saying as a differentiator from the Aggies. The Aggies are undefeated, and they went to Notre Dame and beat a good team. Alabama early in the season, albeit without two of their best players, went to Florida State and lost to a really mediocre team. Again, for me, A&M is the clear number one team in the SEC. I get what you're saying about the history of what A&M has been relative to Georgia and Alabama. Maybe it's hard to put all of that on Mike Elko. But at the same time, we've seen so much from Texas A&M over the years where it's been kind of disappointing. You go back to the one, elite team that they had. It was Sumlin's first year with Johnny Manziel. It was Johnny Manziel, Mike Evans. There was some Superman play there. You have that with Marcel Reed. I just feel like you have a better, run game that travels, and I feel like you have a weaker SEC, to be honest, because I feel like when Johnny was getting rolling at A&M, Saban was at his, and Alabama was full throttle. And right now, I don't think the rest of the SEC is at the level that Alabama was at that point. Obviously, back then, Georgia wasn't really, Mark Richt was still the head coach. But for me, that's what stands out. Now, to the bigger picture thing, I feel like the SEC is considerably deeper than the Big Ten. Whether the top three teams in the SEC, whether it's Alabama, A&M, and Ole Miss, would win two of the three games against Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, I don't know. But I feel very confident in saying once you get deeper into this and you start factoring in Georgia, Vandy, even Mizzou, it's just a deeper pool than what you have with the Nebraskas and USC and Iowa and Minnesota, I guess. To me, that's why I could see 5 teams getting in from the SEC. I mean, would we have thought that sounds blasphemous, Stu, in the beginning of the year that one conference could produce 5 teams?
No, I mean, I think it's always a possibility with those two leagues. I'm, for the most part, reticent to go there because I feel like that was a conversation at some point last year, and they only ended up with 3. But here's the difference, guys. I keep waiting for these teams to peter out a little bit, and it's not happening. And the difference between last year and this year is we saw last year Alabama lose 2 games they shouldn't have lost. We saw Ole Miss lose at home to Kentucky. These teams basically took themselves out of playoff consideration. Those 5 teams at the top of the standings in the SEC right now, A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Vandy, have only lost to each other. And certainly there was opportunities for them to stub their toe, but they keep pulling it out. Ole Miss, I thought, really impressive in the way they handled that atmosphere at Oklahoma. Trinidad Chambliss does not get enough love. But I want to turn to you, Ralph, because you were at Vandy, Missouri. And Vandy, if there is going to be another team in, if there's going to be a 5th team in, right, they would be your prime candidate. Seeing them up close, are they of that caliber? Are they a playoff team? And Ralph is muted.
It's hard.
Ralph is
Sorry,
speechless.
Guys. Sorry, guys. It's hard to, I'm still in a hotel in downtown Nashville, so I'm trying to limit some of the outside noise that's coming in through the streets here.
Is it Vandy fans partying still the next day? Is that what you're here?
They were pretty turned, to quote Diego Pavia. Yeah, it's really is amazing to see what this has become here in Nashville. It was a great scene. They got a nice stadium now. They got a really good team. It's silly to doubt this team. And I can definitely pick and say, listen, they're not as athletic here as some of the top teams. They're not as big here as some of the top teams. They call themselves misfits, right? They're a bunch of guys, a bunch of players who, weren't necessarily wanted at a lot of other bigger schools, and they've come together and now become a top 10 team. They have Texas next week. Boy, that got interesting. They still have Tennessee at the end of the season. And, to imagine a Tennessee Vanderbilt game that could be for a playoff spot is bananas, in Knoxville. So yes, I think they still are probably maybe a cut below athletically and with star ratings and all those things, the very best teams in the SEC. But they won an interesting game yesterday in the fact that they've been averaging 41 points a game. They lean on Pavia in the offense. It's been the defense that's been a little susceptible. But yesterday it was the defense that stepped up because Pavia was getting glitchy and the run game was mostly getting bogged down against a pretty good Missouri defense. Do they catch I hate to call like getting an injury a break, but the fact of the matter is, which is especially bad lingo when you talk about what happened to Bo Perbula, but are you a little fortunate that the starting quarterback from the other team doesn't play most of the second half? Yes, there's probably a little fortune there, but that's football, man. They won a tough game against a tough opponent. And, I think their fate will be decided by what happens next week in Austin. And there's some other interesting stuff going on in Austin too, Stu. Texas is still in the playoff race, but that wasn't necessarily the headline coming out of the Mississippi State game yesterday.
No, and you say Texas is still in yes, on paper, they're still in the playoff. I don't even know if they're a top 25 team, to be honest. Back-to-back weeks, they had to go to overtime to beat two of the worst teams that have not won a game in the SEC. But yeah, the fireworks happened afterward. Let's set it up a little bit. Our colleague, Dianna Russini, reported Saturday morning that Steve Sarkisian, I'll just quote her story here. I'm told that representatives for Texas coach Steve Sarkisian have let NFL decision makers know that he would be interested in potential head coaching openings, including the Titans. Here's what Sark had to say about that after the game.
I'd love to touch on this, so bear with me for a second, because it really pisses me off that one person can make a report that in turn the entire media sports world runs with as factual, to the point of my agency and my agents have to put a statement out that they never have done. Historically, CAA, Jimmy Sexton, and Ed Manowitz have never do that. But I had to do that to protect my locker room and my team. And I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was completely unprofessional of that person to put that report out. And the fact that everybody ran with it is borderline embarrassing for the media. And I respect what you guys do. I really do, and everybody else. But the fact that everybody ran that as truth is really embarrassing. Okay, so I've got a small circle when I make decisions on what I do and what I don't do, and nobody would speak on my behalf without me knowing. And so where that report came from, I'd love to talk to that person because it's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, so again, Dianna is our colleague, so keep that in mind in terms of what we're going to talk about here. But Bruce, your thoughts on how Sark handled that?
Look, I'm sure that is a bombshell that goes off in his locker room, and I get it when he's saying he's trying to protect the locker room. As I was thinking of his comments in the wake of that, obviously he mentioned Jimmy Sexton and Ed Manowitz, who are the two people who represent him, and Diana's language in that she used was somebody she talked to inside, whether it's the Titans or the Dolphins, one of those franchises, conveyed to her, Sark's people think he would listen, right? And look, if there is a college head coach who you would think might be in play, it wouldn't be shocking that it would be Sark for this reason. He's actually coached in the NFL. I mean, he wasn't a great offensive coordinator his 2 years with the Falcons, but he was there. And I think he was with the Raiders way before then. So at least there's an understanding of what it's like to be in the NFL. This isn't like, oh, hey, we're going to grab Urban because, it wasn't a shock that Urban took the job, but it's also the guys who typically have bombed in the NFL are guys who get in there and they don't even know what's going on because it's so new to them. Jim Harbaugh spent 15 years as a quarterback in the NFL before he got to the 49ers and did an amazing job. I think that's the part where, like, okay, you could say that wouldn't shock me. I don't know if you're Sark, I get why he's ticked off. It's not that common to see, as he said, Jimmy Sexton put out a statement. I think he was showing him he had his back. I get why he's ticked off. I just think that in this day and age, not to say, Ralph, I think you referenced this a couple of days ago where it's like, coaches are getting paid 8 figures. Some of this stuff is going to go along with the territory of this. And I don't know if it's just kind of the way the business seems to be going. I mean, am I downplaying that? I don't know. I mean, when you saw that, Ralph, what did you think? And when you heard Sark reaction, did you feel like, oh man, he's going overboard, or how did you feel about it?
So when I saw the report, the first thing that came to my mind is it's leverage season. Dianna stands by her reporting, so there's no reason she does a good job. There's no reason I need to necessarily question her. But what I would say is it is leverage season. And we have a lot of folks who are like, looking for ways to put their clients, and coaches who are looking for ways to put themselves in a situation where they can better their current situation. Maybe it is by even staying at their current situation, but because I have leverage, I can get a little more on my contract, or I can get a little more on my assistant's contract. I can just get a little more of what I need. That is the game that is played right now. I'm here in Vanderbilt, and Jimmy Sexton was here. He was on the field because he's Clark Lee's agent. And after the game, Clark Lee talked about all the things that they can do at Vanderbilt and how great things are here now. But there are still more things that we can do. And we can take this thing a little further. And we have to be conscious of sort of building on this. And he didn't come right out and say that means you need to give me a contract extension and you need to build this or give me this or give me that. But that is the undertone of all this. And what happens is over the next month or so, with all these jobs opening up, and if you're at Texas, listen, there are very few jobs better than Texas. So where are you going to get leverage from if you're someone like Sark or someone like Marcus Freeman? Well, maybe the NFL is a leverage point. So I just think like it is leverage season. Always be negotiating. That was what I tweeted out, talking about the Sark report. And his reaction to it is exactly what it should be because he still has games to play.
Yeah, and what's he gonna say? Like, okay, you guys you got me. Yeah, I'm looking to get out of here. I mean, I think it's not a shock to me. I mean, you look at the situation there, right? He's taken them to back-to-back playoffs, their best run in 15 since Mac Brown. And now, he's having a little bit of a rough start and the fans are furious with him. Yeah, maybe it might be the time for the exit. I will say what would be most fascinating, and we're going to pivot here, but if we, if Sark did leave for the NFL, doesn't that mean Arch would go in the portal? And then we would have like the greatest portal sweepstakes of all time, because he's not going to turn pro, I don't think. So yeah, we will save that for if that were to actually come to pass in a couple months. But yeah, there is football outside the SEC, guys. Really good football at that. And I want to go to the Big 12, and I want to give a particularly some praise on BYU. BYU is now 8-0. They went to Iowa State yesterday. Iowa State is struggling to say the least, but they're a good team, or they have been a good team. BYU falls behind by 2 touchdowns, then storms back to win 41-27. Bear Bachmeier, the true freshman quarterback who was at Stanford still in the spring, throws for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their receivers go off. Bruce, is BYU now the class of the Big 12, or is it hard to say that when they're not even necessarily alone in first place?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're the class of the Big 12. I think they're, Bear Bachmeier's been really impressive. I still would love to see them play Texas Tech. Texas Tech's got, to me, the best defense in the conference. They've had some QB issues, obviously, with injuries. Baron Morton should be back soon. But it's really impressive what Kalani Sitake's done. Remember, going, into the spring, this was going to be Jake Retzloff's team. And instead, here we go with a true freshman who is like the Tim Tebow of the Big 12. Except, unlike Tebow, where there's no Chris Leak involved in this, we have a guy who is just, running all over the place. And it's, I don't know, it's just very impressive, Ralph. I think if they played today, who would you pick, Texas Tech or BYU neutral field?
Well, they're about to play in 2 weeks? I think the BYU's off next week. They have to play in Lubbock, and I think I would still pick Texas Tech. But listen, I feel like I've heard it from the BYU fans when my ballot posted that I have not given them enough respect this year. They're getting it now. Yesterday was super impressive because I thought so too. When they fell behind early, I'm thinking, okay, the wheel's coming off now, or at least they're getting, I shouldn't say the wheels are coming off as much as like they're going to reset now. They're going to catch an L here against a pretty good Iowa State team. Not only do they come back and win that game, but as you said, Bruce, Bear Bachmeier has been mostly a running quarterback. He throws for 300 yards, and LJ Martin misses most of the comeback, their best running back, because he got banged up. I'm not sure what his status is. So the Big 12 has become really fascinating. BYU will either win the Big 12 or determine who wins the Big 12. The Cougars have to play Texas Tech and Cincinnati. And Houston is now in this race too, which is crazy. Willie Fritz's team went to Arizona State. Somebody picked that. Somebody picked Houston to beat Arizona State. Don't remember who that was on this show, but somebody did that. Somebody smart. So now there's a 4-team race there. You have BYU and Cincinnati sitting at undefeated in the conference. Texas Tech and Houston sitting right behind them at 1 loss, but they don't all play each other, but BYU plays 2 of them. So I think BYU, Stu, is sort of the pivot point in this conference, and they will determine who wins, or they will determine who plays in the Big 12 championship game, or play in it themselves.
First of all, I feel bad for Iowa State because they had, they were eyeing a Big 12 title themselves, and then they lost both starting cornerbacks, both of whom have been all Big 12 in their career. And I think that's why you saw Bear Bachmeier go deep over and over and over again. The question about BYU versus Texas Tech is an interesting one because I think we all think Texas Tech is more talented. They bought themselves a heck of a roster. But I have Kalani Sitake, I have a lot of faith in Kalani Sitake. He's been doing this for a long time. In a head-to-head matchup of him and Joey McGuire, as of this moment, I think I'm picking BYU. We'll see what happens then. But also, let's just not throw Cincinnati off to the side. They are 5-0. I thought what they did yesterday, 41-20 over Baylor, was impressive. Brendan Sorsby is one of the better quarterbacks in that conference, and he did throw 2 touchdowns. But Cincinnati ran for 50 times for 265 yards. Scott Satterfield has quietly put together an extremely explosive offense. So they will be a factor in it as well. And like you said, Ralph, Houston, ASU had one of the biggest wins in the country last week, and a week later they lose at home to Houston. I did think last night, and I texted you guys about Ralph's rant about how what coach has one good game, and I was like, What about Willie Fritz? Shouldn't we be talking Willie Fritz as a? I know he's 65, but like the
He's a
guy
great coach,
wins
though.
everywhere. I mean,
Guy's a really
everywhere
good
he
coach.
goes, everywhere. And Houston is much better than they were last year. Bruce, you wanted to follow up?
I did. Before we try to make Houston fans dread that we're trying to ship him off to another job, especially when he has like the top rated quarterback committed to him locally. Let's say this. Texas Tech beats BYU in the Big 12 title game. So you have a one-loss Big 12 and a one-loss Texas Tech team. Do we think it's a pretty good chance that the Big 12 gets two teams under that scenario?
So last year, the Big 12 got squeezed on having 10 win teams that didn't make the playoffs.
But those are two-loss teams. This is obviously
No,
one loss.
I get it. So I'm wondering if so it would seem to me the magic number would be 11. Like if you're telling me that scenario would require Texas Tech beats BYU in the regular season and wins. I'm trying to think of how that works out.
No, it wouldn't be because they would
scenario?
play twice. So then you're getting it would be a two-loss. It would be well, you know what? Then they might not
I think you might need to have like Cincinnati or somebody in there. I don't think
because
there's
then
a way.
Texas Tech's getting into the Big 12
I think
title
you need
game
somebody to go 11-1 and miss the Big 12 title game, which is absolutely possible. They'll have some sort of crazy tiebreaker, right? Like it might not be. Yeah, somebody didn't play somebody.
Well, that's what's going on in the ACC, by the way. Like
with Miami,
Miami's in really good shape to go.
And Miami actually has a better win than anybody in the Big 12 is going to have because they beat Notre Dame out of the gate. So,
but I understand your scenario there, Bruce. Like I think that is the best case scenario for the Big 12 to possibly get to, is to get another team that's sitting there at 11-1. Because again, last year they got passed over at 10-2, and I do wonder if this year they'll get passed over at 10-2 as well. Stu,
we saw Indiana get in at 11-1 last year with absolutely no resume. So I tend to think if any team in any of these four conferences is 11-1, they're getting in. But we talked earlier about possibly 5 SEC teams. So we would be never hearing the end of that debate. I think we have to talk about a coach who in the Big 12 who is not doing as well as Willie Fritz or Scott Satterfield or any of those guys. I always have it's not Pac-12 anymore, but the After Dark game on. It's like the soundtrack to writing Final Thoughts, or writing most of Final Thoughts. And I kept looking up Utah, another Utah touchdown, another Utah touchdown, another Utah touchdown. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's still only the second quarter. Utah led Colorado 43-0 at the half. At that point, Colorado had negative yardage at halftime of this game. So Utah ends up kind of taking it easy on them in the second half, to be honest. But the final score that I used to have in front of me but don't now was what?
53-7, maybe? 56-7?
53-7.
7, yeah.
53-7. Utah is still very good. I know they already have the 2 losses. They're still very good, but Colorado guys, 3-5 overall, 1-4 in the Big 12, and honestly, probably going to end up. I don't know what the record will be, but this team is worse than Deion's first team that went 4-8. Right? I think we can agree on that. So, I just throw it out to you guys in terms of like, and Deion's having the health issues. Like, what do we think happens from here?
I mean, I would not be surprised if this was, given the health issues, certainly if this would be his last season at TU. Look, honestly, there's also been some talk inside college athletics that maybe Rick George, the AD, he may retire sooner than later. I'm not saying it's going to happen imminently, but that's been a great partnership in Boulder. When I watched the game last night, it kind of reminded me of Deion's first year. Late in the year, they played a Friday night game at Wazoo and got annihilated. The score was almost the same, honestly, as the one from the Utah game last night. I think what's different about that first year team compared to this one, that had Shador and that had Travis Hunter, and it had just difference maker players, wanted to keep position at quarterback, and then obviously, a super talented player in Hunter. This team may have more solid players. It doesn't have the star power anywhere near it, and they've been kind of lost at quarterback. He's juggled 3 different guys. Again, we'll see how it plays out, but I do want to, one of our commenters, KT Travels, who gets fired first? Brian Kelly, Luke Fickell, Mike Norvell, or Bill Belichick? Ralph, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Well, this allows us to pivot to Bill Belichick, and who yet again came very, very close to getting his first Power 4 victory at UNC. That I don't think Belichick's getting fired. First of all, I think the only way Belichick leaves North Carolina, I believe, is if he decides to leave and they work out some agreement where he goes. And I think I may have said this before earlier in the week. A lot of very powerful people put Bill Belichick in that position. People who do not like to admit that they are wrong. They would have to concede they are wrong to remove him from that position. And I don't think any of the powerful people, including Bill Belichick, are reasonable enough. I think they're all stubborn enough to try this one more year. And there has been a little progress the last couple of weeks. That's it. This is a tough one. I don't know if I would think Norvell, but there's so much money there. There's a path for him to play his way out of it. There's a path for Kelly to play his way out of this, though I think that's probably
Is there really? I mean, he's got to upset Alabama at Alabama. That's basically the only path. Yeah,
conceivably there's a path for him to play his way out of this. But I don't know, Stu. What do you think if I gave you that list of characters to see who makes it and who doesn't?
Well, I think the thing about that list is that just on this past Monday, with Fickell, with Norvell, like those ADs basically said, if we do it, it's not going to be talked for the season. This isn't going to happen immediately. And I agree with you that Belichick's going to be safe. So kind of leaves Kelly kind of by default. Like if we think he's done, and I do, he's the one of the 4 that I would think could get fired before the end of the season. If not, then it's just like, well, what day? What's the sequence of days? What time on that Sunday after Thanksgiving? I don't know. I still think Norvell can save himself. I think Kelly and Fickell are done. In terms of Belichick, guys, I have to say, I was at the Cal UNC game, so I watched all of that one. I watched more of the UNC Virginia game than I'd like to admit, because it was not good football, as a lot of these ACC games are, frankly.
You'll be getting a note from someone I know on that one, I think.
Hey, they got some good teams. Georgia Tech's good. Miami's still pretty good. Louisville's still pretty good. Anyway, yes. So here's the thing. It's not a disaster at this point. They've been competitive in both these games. Frankly, both these games came down to the very end. But God, it's hard to watch them just all the self-inflicted mistakes. It's a close game. It's a tie game, and I'm just going to look you back here at the play-by-play. Like in the fourth quarter, at one point, UNC had the ball across midfield, 3rd and 4, false start. So now they don't convert the 3rd and 9, so they have to punt. Virginia has the ball now, and they get to. UNC gets called for roughing the passer. That helps extend that drive. They did end up forcing a punt. And then UNC gets the ball back with 55 seconds left. Chance to win it in regulation. Second play, holding. And then they actually did get close to field goal range. They could have possibly set up a field goal. But for whatever reason, Gio Lopez throws deep and gets intercepted.
Right. So the ball was tipped and intercepted.
Yeah. So it goes to overtime. And Belichick, the one thing he'll get praised for with me is I strongly, strongly believe coaches should go for 2 at the bottom of the first overtime, because you're going to have to do it anyway in the next possession. He goes for it. He doesn't get it. They lose 17-16 to the allegedly number 16 team in the country. It's hard for me to, it's one of those things where they beat Florida State early in the season. They get a lot of love for that, and it turns out Florida State's not even really good. But hey, they're showing progress, guys. You think UNC? Do you over under UNC 1.5 ACC wins the rest of the way? What do you got?
Over.
Over.
I'll take the over.
So you think he's going to win 2?
Yeah.
The schedule is not very hard, and what we've seen, honestly, is his biggest mistake was him putting the keys to Mike Lombardi, the highest paid GM. It's the roster issue that's where he's bombed. The margin for error is just not very good. That's why they're in these tight games and they struggled. But I don't know. I feel like we've talked plenty about Belichick in North Carolina. Let's pivot to our shout outs. Ralph, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to start with so Akron beat Buffalo yesterday, and it was their first MAC win, first FBS win. Only other victory for the Zips and Joe Moorhead this season was against Duquesne. Buffalo was sitting at the top of the is still contending for a MAC championship. Akron came up with a big victory there. Listen, it's not a great situation. It may be one of the worst situations in terms of funding and commitment to the program. I don't want to make too light of it because I think that is a school that seriously has to ask themselves, like, do we want to play FBS football? Joe Moorhead took that job a couple of years ago. He's been an offensive coordinator at Penn State and Oregon, and head coach at Mississippi State. Took that job for a lot of family reasons, be closer to his family. And he's won a few games here and there. I think he's doing the best he can, but I think it's good for everyone at Akron to occasionally feel the warmth of a victory. And they managed to get one yesterday and did it against a pretty good MAC opponent.
Bruce, have you noticed that Ralph always finds a way to tie his shout outs to Fordham? It always goes back to Fordham, doesn't it?
God bless him.
I do.
He's loyal. He's a loyal alum. Okay, Ralph.
Go Rams.
Stu, are you going to shout out somebody from Northwestern or somebody from that high school in Cincinnati that Pete Rose didn't like? Who's it going to be?
No, I mean, I'm going to bring it back, a little callback early in the season when we were doing like our player to watch that weekend. I went with Drew Mestemaker, the North Texas QB. That game wasn't his best, but on Friday, Drew Mestemaker became the first QB in 5 years to throw for 600 yards. It was against a very bad Charlotte team, to be clear. But this guy, the redshirt freshman walk-on, is taking the American Conference by storm. I'm going to play a little quick trivia with you guys. He's the first quarterback to throw for 600 yards since who?
Pat Mahomes?
It was in 2020.
Oh, the kid who played for Mississippi State for Leash and LSU.
KJ Costello. KJ Costello.
I'm going to give you that one. He threw for his 608 was the most since KJ Costello in 2020. Threw for 623, but technically he was the first one since Dylan Gabriel who was at UCF at that time. He was the first.
Oh, okay. That year as well.
Later in that season, Dylan Gabriel threw for 600 yards. So kudos to him. Bruce, who you got?
By the way, just on the Mestemaker thing, what's so cool about his story wasn't a high school starting quarterback. He was, he taught himself how to punt, was a really good punter, played receiver, wanted to stay with his buddies, didn't move on. It's a really cool story. For me, the shout out is to Tommy Moffitt. He was the longtime strength coach at LSU, was revered inside that program. He was one of just a couple of actual links that stayed from Saban through Ogeron. He was also the first guy Brian Kelly fired when he got the job. He was out. Some people had told him inside the business, at this age in your mid-60s, no big school is going to hire you again. Mike Elko did. And Mike Elko shouted him out yesterday when he pointed out that in the second half of these two games against his old school LSU, Tommy Moffitt's teams have outscored the Tigers 60-6 in the second half. That is a testament to the toughness that he has kind of preached and helped develop for Elko. And it's a cool story for him getting a little bit of payback against the school and the coach that kind of ran him out of there.
Hey, real quick, did you hear what Marcel Reed said about that? Marcel Reed.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, do you want to go? Yeah, you want to tee it up, or were you still fact checking that? Were you still?
No.
Marcel?
I
Okay.
saw the same line. Marcel Reed basically said Tommy Moffitt had tackling dummy brought out with Brian Kelly's face on it.
BK
again,
really makes friends, man.
Yeah.
Nobody makes friends like BK.
And that's part of why he was never really embraced there. Is right from the beginning he was firing guys who LSU fans loved, like him, like Corey Raymond. By the way, last night one of the Louisiana TV reporters said he had reached out to Moffitt requesting a possible interview this past week, and he screenshotted the response, which was, "I would rather do my talking with my fist this week." That pretty much what he did. Now, there was some sad news, Bruce, in the strength coach community also on Saturday.
Yeah, Kurt Hester, who a few weeks back, Jen Latta from ESPN did a really touching piece on him. He had a long battle with illness. Was Houston's strength coach and a guy really well respected in the business, passed away over the weekend. And so our thoughts are with his family and friends and all the people he impacted, because, as we've said, strength coaches get close to everybody in those programs, and there was a lot of people I think he helped make better.
Yeah, condolences to his family. Really sad situation there, obviously amidst a very triumphant season so far at Houston. We put our thoughts out to their community. If you like these recap shows that we do, well, guess what? Good news. You can watch them live every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific on YouTube at Audible Show. And all of our shows, the Sunday show, the Tuesday show, and the Thursday show, we post to YouTube. So make sure to subscribe at Audible Show. We will be back Tuesday, and we'll see you then.